Good morning. We've just got to keep hanging on. How often are we told this when we are going through tough times? One of the posters hanging on a wall in my teenage bedroom was of a cat at the very end of its rope. I like that poster not so much for the hanging on message, but because of the cat's face. That cat was freaking out. And you know, sometimes that is exactly what my interior face feels like. I wonder if a similar face Jacob was wearing. He had just sat down, he was alone in the night, he had just finished taking everything that belonged to him across the stream. His 2 wives, his 2 maids, his 11 children, and the rest of his property. He is alone in the creeping darkness of this night. It is 20 years since he has seen Esau, the brother he had swindled out of his birthright, out of the only blessing a firstborn receives. 20 years after being sent away to the home of Laban, his mother's brother. 20 years of hiding from his own brother's revenge. 20 years of living as both offender and victim of deceit and treachery. And 20 years where his hard work had brought prosperity. But issues of inheritance had followed him to Laban's home, as his prosperous growth happened, Laban's own sons became jealous. And now, 20 years later, God is calling Jacob to his family's land. This night, then, he waits. He waits between 2 adversaries. Behind him is Laban and the uneasy peace they crafted before Jacob left. And ahead of him is Esau and his 400 men. This night, Jacob wrestles with deceit and treachery and what they bring. Crafty and prudent Jacob had worked hard to ease his reunion with his brother. He sent messengers with gifts ahead of him. He had divided his possessions in half, hoping that half of his wealth would survive Esau's vengeance. And leaving nothing to chance, he also called on God, reminding God that he had a responsibility to Jacob, for it is God who had set him on the return path to the land of his ancestors. And so, were the preparations enough? Jacob can only wait in the darkness. In the darkness, things seem different, don't they? Sounds are distorted. We may feel closed in. We may feel pressed upon. We are unable to see, and so our mind provides the images for what we do not see. But in darkness, there is light. And as author Barbara Brown Taylor reminds us, new life begins in the dark, in a baby in the womb, a seed in the ground, Jesus in his tomb. In his darkness, Jacob wrestles with the one he cannot see, one who suddenly came upon him. Is it Esau? Is it Laban? Is it his own deceit? Whatever it is that has grabbed him, Jacob grabs back, and they hold fast to each other. They hold fast. Holding fast to the wrongs we have done is not a good thing. It can be destructive to our soul. To let them go is to take on an eternal struggle so that we can learn to grab onto something else, the grace and love of God. and in his holding on to that man who came upon him, in his refusing to let go, his struggle is ultimately of the learning to grab onto something else, the grace and love of God. Such a struggle brings a transformation. When I think of the people of God, I must admit my first thought is of really, really, really good people who do justice and walk humbly with God. But I am thankful for all of the biblical stories, even these stories like Jacob's story, for they remind me how imperfect the people of God are. Some of our stories from the muck of life are really ugly. You know, the Hebrew word that we translated into English here as wrestle means to get dusty. We are of dust. So this struggle, this wrestling that Jacob does, it is the wrestling of life, the dust of life, the dust that forms life and reforms life. It is the dust of identity. At the end of his nighttime struggle, Jacob gets just that. He gets a new identity with a new name. Remember how he grabbed the heel of his brother at his birth? Well, that is one definition of the name Jacob, but it is also the one who follows, or the one who supplants. But when he is given this new identity and this new name, it is the name Israel, the one who struggles and prevails. It is good to remember that in our struggles, while we may limp away, we prevail. What is your name, he is asked. Sometimes we need new names, don't we? Sometimes we need to tell ourselves we are no longer this, but this. Finding ways to mark, to name the changes that our wrestling brings helps move us along into our new life. And so, humbled by the night's struggle, Jacob, Israel, lives into his new name and his new identity when he meets his brother Esau. He is given a gift by Esau to live into this new name as Esau welcomes him. And Jacob, Israel replies, "To see your face is like seeing the face of God." Esau's reply brings their story of reconciliation to a close. "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." My friends, we may indeed limp when we go along our way, but we need to remember that in our struggles, we do prevail because God goes alongside with us. God is in the midst of our life, especially in the dusty places of our life. And we all know what God does with dust. God creates life. Amen.